So in the last couple of talks, we were discussing the impact of the land on designing buildings. And in particular, we were looking at 3 projects that really seemed to emerge out of the land. And there was a strong influence by the physical considerations of the land in shaping that architecture. For the next couple of talks, we're going to be discussing related things, but at a much larger scale. The scale of geography and topography and ecology of a region, and the way that those kinds of factors can influence the design of buildings and neighborhoods and communities at a kind of larger scale. So as we discuss this larger scale, it makes us think about a field that is very, very closely connected to architecture. Some people would say is a part of architecture. Some people would say is a little bit outside the realm of architecture. And that's the field of planning. In the School of Architecture at UT, we have a program in community and regional planning. It's a part of the School of Architecture. That's probably more common at universities than not. But planning overlaps very much with architecture, but probably deals with some issues that one might not, strictly speaking, call architecture. So actually planning is generally made up of 5 different kinds of planning. And some of those have more to do with architecture and some less. So one aspect is transportation planning. And this is really how we get around in a region or a city. And obviously that has a lot to do with architecture, because how we build buildings interfaces with a transportation system that may be a subway, it may be a light rail system, it may be buses, it may be bicycles, it may be pedestrians. All of those interfaces help shape buildings, so transportation planning is very, very much a part of architecture as well. A second part of planning is what you might call infrastructure planning. So this is making sure that there is water, city water distributed, there's electrical power, there's sanitary sewer, which is what happens when you flush the toilet, it goes down the sanitary sewer. Storm sewer, which is taking care of rainwater and disposing of it. These days it's Wi-Fi and other kinds of communication methods. So all of these are infrastructure. And the way they're embedded in a neighborhood or community or city very much influences then the way architecture emerges out of them. Obviously, architecture needs those services, that infrastructure to plug into to actually function. So infrastructure planning is very connected to architecture too. A third kind of planning is land use planning. And this is maybe some of the functional relationships, but now at an urban or regional scale. So that's trying to make sure that if you have an elementary school here with little bitty kids with their lungs developing, you do not put a factory next to it that spews pollution that denigrates the air and would cause problems for those kids. So land use says, okay, the industrial functions are going to go over here, and no schools or places, daycare centers or anything would be nearby it. It may say that in this part of the city we're going to concentrate on residential environments, and in this part of the city we're going to concentrate on retail environments. So land use planning, and sometimes that may mean mixed use land use, where things are put together in certain combinations. But land use planning is sorting out what functions go where at the scale of a city. Then the fourth type of planning, and this is the one that probably has less direct impact on architecture, is social services planning. And this is really making sure that there's a safety net for disadvantaged people, making sure there's elder care for older people that may not be able to take care of themselves, making sure that there are counseling services, mental health services, all of these social services that are provided to a community. And certainly they interface with architecture in that we have buildings to accommodate mental health services and recreation centers and daycare centers and parks and so on like that, but maybe less direct connection than with infrastructure planning or transportation planning or land use planning. The fifth and final type of planning I want to talk about, and it's really what we're going to concentrate on in the talk today, is environmental planning. And this is really planning in a way that respects the ecology of a place, that understands the wind and the soils and the rain and the sun and all of the natural factors, the flora, the fauna, the wildlife. How does human development in an area become compatible with the way nature has already structured a certain environment? So environmental planning, very, very connected to architecture. It's something we worry about a great deal in architecture, is the impact it might have on the ecology of the environment of a place. So environmental planning is really kind of the focus of what we're talking about today. And to introduce this notion of environmental planning, I want to read a little story. And this is the introduction to a book called Site Planning by John Simons. Site planning is really that interface of architecture and environmental planning. How do we make a site respond to natural factors of the environment and be compatible with it? So listen up to this little story. So once there was a hunter who spent his days tracking the wide prairies of North Dakota with his gun and a dog, and sometimes with a small boy who wanted to trot along. On this particular morning, hunter and boy, far out on the prairie, sat watching intently a rise of ground ahead of them. It was pocked with gopher holes. From time to time, a small striped gopher would nervously whisk from the mouth of his den to cover up matted prairie grass, soon to reappear with cheek food pouches bulging. Smart little outfits, these gophers, the hunter observed. I mean, the way they have things figured out. Whenever you come upon a gopher village, you can be sure it will be near a patch of grain where they can get their food, and close by a creek or slough for water. They'll not build their towns near willow clumps, for that's where the owls and hawks will be roosting. And you'll not be finding them near stony ledges or a pile of rocks where their enemies, the snakes, will be hiding, ready to snatch them. When these wise little critters build their towns, they search out the southeast slope of a knoll that will catch the full sweep of the sun each day to keep their dens warm and cozy in the winter. The winter blizzards that pound out of the north and west to leave a windward slope of the rises frozen solid will only drift loose powder snow on top of their homes. When they dig their dens, continued the hunter, do you know what they do? They slant the runway steeply down for 2 or 3 feet and then double back up near the surface again, where they level off a nice dry shelf. That's where they lie, close under the sod, out of the wind, warmed by the sun, near to their food and water, and as far away as they can get from their enemies, and surrounded by all their gopher friends. Yes, sir, they sure have it all planned out. Is our town built on the southeast slope? The small boy asked thoughtfully. No, said the hunter. Our town slopes down to the north, in the teeth of the bitter winter winds, and cold as a frosty gun barrel. He frowned. Even in summer, the breezes work against us. When we built the new flax mill, the only mill for 40 miles around, where do you think we put it? We put it right smack in the only spot where every breeze in the summertime can catch the smoke from its stack and pour it across our houses and into our open windows. At least our town is built near the river and water, said the boy defensively. Yes, said the hunter, but where near the river did we build our homes? In the low, flat land inside the river bend. That's where. And each spring, when the snows melt on the prairie and the river swells, it floods every cellar in town. Gophers would plan things better than that, the small boy decided. Yes, said the hunter, a gopher would be smarter. When gophers plan their homes and towns, the boy philosophized, they seem to do it better than people do. Yes, mused the hunter, and so do most of the animals I know. Sometimes I wonder why. So for the rest of this talk, we're going to be trying to figure out what is at stake when we don't work with the natural environment, when we don't plan our cities and towns in concert with the natural environment. So let's just look at an example of the way that you would take environmental factors and use it to shape a decision about planning or building that has huge consequence to the city. So let's take as an example the selection of the site and the building of Austin Bergstrom International Airport. So this was a situation where the old airport, Robert Mueller Airport, was in the middle of the city, and that had worked fine when Austin was a tiny little city. But as the city grew, it was causing big problems for the neighborhoods around. The airport had longer runways, they had noisier airplanes, they had more frequent flights, and a group of neighbors around Robert Mueller Airport sued the city for acoustical intrusion on their neighborhood. So it turned out they won the lawsuit, and the city was told either you have to soundproof all these homes and schools and churches, or you have to move the airport so that it doesn't create this acoustical problem for the neighborhood. So it turned out it was about an equal amount of money for each, but they made the decision to move the airport. This is a big, swallow-hard decision to move an airport from a very convenient location to a new location, just a little further out of the city. Now, they had to worry about environmental factors because there are two things that are really important in an airport. One is that you need very good soil conditions for an airport. You're building not just the building, but you're building lots and lots of runways. And those runways take huge loads of airplanes pounding down on them every day. And they transfer those loads into the ground. Now, Austin has a very kind of unique geology below the ground. The Balcones Fault runs right through Austin. Actually, just a little ways over here is the Balcones Fault. And on the east side of it over here, the land is relatively flat and it's clay soil. On the west side of the Balcones Fault, which kind of runs down Shoal Creek and Lamar Boulevard, on the west side, the landscape gets more hilly and it's more limestone in the soil. So if you're looking for a location for the airport, you're looking for those good soil conditions. You don't want the clay because the clay is expansive. That means that when it gets wet, it swells, and when it dries out, it shrinks. So this is a terrible foundation issue. And if you're building all these runways, you'd like to avoid having to deal with that problem of expansive clay soils. So in that way, you could just look at the region of Austin, and you would look at those areas that are kind of convenient for an airport, not too far for people to drive out to. And you're looking for those areas that might have good soil conditions. Then the other thing that's important in an airport is you want to have it relatively flat. You've got all these runways, and they want to be flat. So again, the Balcones Fault has hills on one side to the west, and it has flat land on one side to the east. And so you'd rather be on the flat land than on the hilly land. Now, geologically, this is a conundrum because the good soil, the limestone soil, is in the hilly area. And you want flat area with the good soil. And the bad soil is in the area with the flat ground. So there was the ability to kind of look at overlaps and places where maybe the limestone wasn't too far below the soil, and you could get better soil conditions. So by analyzing all of that, you could come to a location that had relatively flat ground and that had relatively good soil conditions. And that actually was the circumstance for the current location of Austin-Bergstrom International Airport. So in locating that airport, it was very important to take into account the geology of the area, the soil conditions, the topography of the area, the slopes, and that formulated where our airport is today. So that's how environmental factors very logically, very practically, very economically impact decisions about planning and about architecture. So let's think about how important that is in many ways for Austin. So in Austin, it's almost a necessity that we take into account environmental factors when we're planning our city and when we're building our buildings. Sometimes in Austin, we talk about the 3 E's. The first E is environment. There certainly is a perception that Austin is located in a beautiful physical environment. Gorgeous trees, the Colorado River that runs through the city, the creeks that permeate the city. And in fact, Austin's location was chosen way back in the 1830s because it was deemed to be a beautiful environment. So we were blessed with this setting of a very beautiful natural environment. And the environment's the first E. The second E refers to experience. Is there a way that we can maximize, optimize our interaction with that physical environment? Make it enjoyable, make it something that we can appreciate. And that's by, here at Lady Bird Lake, boating, fishing, hiking around the lake, all the kinds of things that interface with the environment and that really make the environment a part of our experience. And the more that we can optimize that second E experience, the more we take advantage of that first E, the environment. And then the third E is economy. Because in Austin, our economy is greatly tied to these first 2 E's. We don't have natural resources like oil and gas. We're not dependent on them for our economy. We're not a great airport hub like DFW. We're not a great shipping hub like the ship channel in Houston. We don't have those kind of economic drivers to make our city prosperous. What we have to depend on is quality of life. And the reason why people move to Austin or want to be in Austin is because they perceive it to be a place that has a good quality of life. And a lot of that quality of life is tied to those first 2 E's, the environment and the experience of that environment. So those 3 E's go together: environment, experience, and economy. Now, a lot of people look at Austin and say, oh man, you guys are just a bunch of tree huggers. We've got this romance over saving the environment. But the truth is, it's a necessity in Austin. Our economic capability, our prosperity, depends on the maximizing of environmental planning and good use of the environment to enhance our experience here. Okay, see you next time.